Buonasera a tutte e a tutti. Welcome to everybody. Grazie, thank you to be here. Sono Cristina Bucci, faccio parte del coordinamento MTA e sono molto felice di dare a tutti il benvenuto al Director Exchange da parte del sistema Musei Toscani per l'Alzheimer, il sistema supportato dalla Regione Toscana per rendere i musei e la cultura accessibili a tutti, anche alle persone che vivono con la demenza. Il nostro sistema, che si è formalizzato nel 2020, dunque molto giovane, si è costruito intorno al lavoro di rete di tanti educatori museali e educatori geriatrici che si sono incontrati nei percorsi formativi, che sono fondamentali, indispensabili per creare squadre di lavoro capaci di sviluppare programmi museali per accogliere persone con demenza e chi se ne prende cura all'interno appunto dei nostri musei. Nel nostro comitato di indirizzo, ai nostri convegni, partecipano più educatori che direttori e quindi sono particolarmente emozionata nell'aprire questo incontro che abbiamo voluto dedicare alle direttrici e ai direttori dei musei, perché riteniamo che il loro supporto, le loro scelte, la loro consapevolezza, la loro visione siano fondamentali per promuovere il diritto di tutti e di tutte a partecipare della vita culturale della comunità. Questa iniziativa è stata realizzata con il contributo di tante persone e non posso ringraziarle tutte e temo di dimenticare qualcuno, però desidero senz'altro ringraziare tutti i relatori e le relatrici, la moderatrice delle sessioni plenarie Annalisa Cicerchia, i moderatori e le moderatrici delle sessioni di approfondimento. Un grazie speciale va all'ambasciata e al consolato generale dei Paesi Bassi, che ha contribuito alla realizzazione di questo incontro e che sostiene il progetto Musei Resilienti e la nostra collaborazione con i colleghi dei Paesi Bassi. Ringrazio anche la Regione Toscana che appunto ci sostiene, quindi ha reso possibile questo evento e ringrazio tutti voi. Passo subito la parola a Annalisa Cicerchia.
Grazie Cristina, thank you Cristina, and thank you all for being here. I must say it is really a pleasure and an honor for me to be called on behalf of the Cultural Welfare Center to facilitate here your works, our works, in a very special day. It's a special day for several reasons. One and foremost, I wish to remind to ourselves, to all, that today it is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I think this adds a further dimension, a further significance to the meeting we are having today. And I will also like to pick some elements from the words that Cristina has just told, the relevance of having directors with us. Because I think this is in a way something that reminds me of an important publication back in 1998 of the Council of Europe, a report that was titled In from the Margins, and it dealt with the slow and painful somehow long way that culture had to go before being considered relevant, significant, meaningful for the whole of society, economy, institutions, and so on and so forth. And I think that the same moment is something that we are here to share and to appreciate, the idea that inclusion and the fact that cultural heritage, museums must leave none at the margins. So the challenge and the engagement with the idea of inclusion, that is something that not only helps bringing people from the margins in our institutions from the margins, but also means better capability of reaching and communicating with the average visitor, the average participant, that I think it's very important. And the fact that there are so many directors here to share their experiences and to exchange stories is very, very relevant. But I don't want to take too much time. We have a lot of fantastic experiences that will be exchanged, and we have important presenters. Let me introduce them very briefly. We will have a video by Charles Esche, that is the director of the Abbemuseum of the Eindhoven, and he will present their experiences. Just to be very, very, very quick. They started back in 2013 with a program for people with dementia, and now they have this unforgettable project, and I think they have reached now a network of 12 museums, I think, that offer unforgettable tours. And they also have the unlimited program that focus on the visitors and insist on access for anyone who is curious, whether they are blind or visually impaired, deaf or hard of hearing, and even if you are bedridden, that the museum will come to you. And another initiative is Vitamins for the Spirit, something that is simply enthusiastic. Now, I think I will leave the floor to the video, and then I will come back to you with the next presenter.
Hello, I'm happy to join you today. My name is Charles Esche, and I'm director of the Abbemuseum in Eindhoven. And I was asked to say a few words of introduction of the museum, and also my role as director, and how I have been working here. Inevitably, it's better to ask people that you work with rather than the director themselves about being a director. But I think, nevertheless, I can say a few words about the Abbemuseum and what we have done in the past 18 years since I began in Eindhoven. So the Abbemuseum was founded in 1936 in an industrial town, essentially, a town that was growing through the industry of Philips, but also the tobacco industry. And Van Abbe is born of the tobacco industry, tobacco coming from the former Dutch colony of Indonesia in the main. And in a way, that DNR, being in the Catholic south of the Netherlands, being in the province in relationship to Amsterdam or Rotterdam, being part of an industrial developing city, which is still in a way a process of becoming a city, is very much what is part of the museum today. We still carry that legacy forward. In 1936, although we didn't have a particularly radical or experimental collection, the collection was already modern in the sense that the paintings that were first bought from Henri Van Abbe, the founder, were from the previous 20 years. So were essentially contemporary artworks to 1936. And that idea of the museum has basically lasted for the past 80 or so years. We are a museum that is still focused on the idea of the modern, but perhaps in a much more critical way than we might have been some time ago, but certainly thinking about the consequences of modern ideology, modernism, modernity, which is in our DNA, in the beginning part of or the first quarter, we could say, of the 21st century. Now, I became director in 2004, so that's already a long time ago. And I think that when I came, I had a vision. In a way, that's what a director is expected to do, no? To have a vision of a radical and hospitable museum that was rooted in our environment, but relevant to the international art world. To cut a long story short, I think in the last 18 years, I've learned that listening and learning for myself is far more important than having a mission and vision. What I mean by that is I think a good director is somebody who enables others to use their experience and their knowledge to realize activities that otherwise they might be unable to realize. But also a good director is somebody who knows the limits of their vision, who knows the limits of their idea of what the museum should be. And so those cliches of the director as a leader should also be tempered by the idea of trying to step back, not only enable other people, but understand the limits of your own capacity. What I mean by that is that this listening and learning, which has affected me and began with the colleagues, is something that has increasingly spread out, and that is then done collectively, not only by myself, but by all my colleagues, into listening and learning from the communities and the groups that surround the museum. Those local groups that are in Eindhoven or in the region here, but also those groups that are engaged in the museum because they're interested in the possibilities of art to contribute towards certain aspects of their own lives or the lives of people who they're concerned about. So that listening and learning then starts to affect the program in profound ways. It stops being a way in which certain decisions are made at the artistic level in the curatorial department, say, and then worked out how best to sell them or how best to connect communities. And it starts to become a process of thinking, how can we deploy our knowledge, our collection, our archives, our understanding, our connections and network within the art world? How can we best deploy these capacities that we have for the use of the communities in this area which we're talking to? And so the museum, Van Abbemuseum at least, and we've gone through various processes of working with different kinds of bodies, from people with Alzheimer's or aphasia to people that are blind or partially sighted, or people who are in wheelchairs, etc. All those processes of learning from different bodies, learning from different types of people with different educational backgrounds, with different ethnic backgrounds, with different understandings of what art might be because of where they come from and how they approach the society in which we all participate. That's through that process, I think the Van Abbemuseum is slowly becoming what we call a constituent museum. Constituent museum means a museum that's built up of a plurality of voices, a plurality of bodies, a plurality of different positions, but yet tries within that plurality to contain it at least as a set of exchanges between differences, rather than search for a singularity or a sameness or a modernist, if you like, line of progression. So that constituent museum, a museum of a pluriversal idea of the world, rather than a universal one, is very much the project that we are in these last few years developing. Thank you very much. I hope to see you later in the workshop.
Thank you to Charles Esche, and I think that its contribution has been very rich. I love in particular this idea of the director and the museum as an enabler of people, and this relationship with their community, and that I think it's very important and fascinating. Now it's the turn of Wendy Gallagher. She is the director of the civic engagement of Manchester Museum in Manchester, and I think the experience that she is able to share with us is something that for many of us will be sort of unique, because the Manchester Museum is going to invest a huge amount of money on a new project, the Hello Future, that will mean opening to the policies of inclusive access and opening to all kinds of publics with a dimension and a strength and resources that for many of us are frankly unheard of. So there is another thing that I'm very so I hope she will focus on this new investment of this Hello Future project, but I'm very curious about a smaller project that is called, if I'm not wrong, Cultural First Aid Kit for carers and for adults, researchers and volunteers, that I think especially in these difficult times is a very interesting and inspiring project. So Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Annalisa, and hello to everybody. Thank you for being invited. I'll first tell you a little bit about Manchester Museum. It's part of the University of Manchester. It's also the largest university museum in the UK. It's known traditionally as an encyclopedic museum. We've got both human cultures and the natural world all under one roof. We have really large collections. So we've actually got over 4.5 million objects across all disciplines. I would challenge anybody to pick a subject or a topic, and we would definitely be able to find an object that could relate to it. As Annalisa touched on, we are currently going through a capital development, which we call Hello Future. This will bring to the museum and to the communities of Manchester and Greater Manchester a new South Asia gallery, a new Chinese culture gallery, a new exhibition hall, lots of new facilities, changing places toilets, which is amazing, lots of toilets, everyone wants lots of toilets in the museum. We are also transforming the top floor of our building, which will be about the future of education. And it will be a hub for environmental action and social justice. This space is a really dynamic space in that the learning and engagement team, instead of having their offices, behind the scenes, they will be working out in the public spaces of the galleries. They'll retain their offices, of course, but what that's enabling them to do is to really connect with our communities and have those really important conversations. We also have on that top floor a whole range of co-workers and partners that are resident with us. So at present, even though we're closed to the public at the moment due to the public development, we're still very much open in terms of the engagement that we do with our community groups, schools, different partners. So we have a specialist college for neurodiverse young people, and they provide visual arts education and also functional skills. They've been resident with us now for 2.5 years. It's really a mutually beneficial relationship. We're able to provide them with great expertise, the knowledge of our curators and our education staff, but they are also able to get involved in the life and the projects of the museum. So the young people, although they're doing their curriculum there, they also get opportunities to work on the many different projects and, do social media takeovers and things like that. We're very shortly having a supplementary school, which will join us at the beginning of March. And so we'll be opening late to accommodate them. We have another organisation called Invisible Cities, and they work with people that have had experience of homelessness, and they train these people to do tours around our city. So they're resident with us. We have Climate Emergency Manchester that have joined us, Multilingual Manchester. So we are aiming to also become a multilingual museum. And we work with we've got a really long and successful history of partnership working, and that's including groups like Together Dementia Support, who we've worked with now for I think over 5 years, and other housing associations, Southway Housing, that support elderly people, many of whom are living with dementia as well. And we together co-curate and co-develop different programmes and exhibitions. For us at Manchester Museum, our mission and the vision of our Direttore is very straightforward. It's about building understanding between cultures and building a sustainable world. We are very much values driven, and it is about being inclusive, being imaginative, and putting care at the centre of everything we do. So although we do care for objects, it's about the people that we work with, our staff that we work with, and we have an amazing body of volunteers that get very much involved in the work that we do. The work that we've done with people living with dementia, so I myself, initially, I went into nursing when I left school. That was a long time ago. And then I went on to study art, and then I moved into I was teaching before I moved into the cultural sector. But I've always really been driven and had a passion for how culture, heritage and the arts are beneficial to people's health and well-being, emotional well-being and mental health in particular. And I could see the power that museums had, and in terms of public health, and how they could work with the other agencies and other sectors within their cities. And so we've really built up many partnerships across the social and health and care sector within Manchester. We're very fortunate in terms of where we are located, that we have a really huge hospital just down the road for us. So we provide training for health and social care workers in terms of enhancing perhaps the arts activities that are available in hospitals, working with people with complex health needs. Many of the elderly people that go in hospital may actually go in and they don't have a diagnosis of dementia. However, it's very clear that they may be at the early stages of dementia with a number of other complex health issues. So at one point we were delivering programmes within the hospital, but we found that that quite challenging. We still do that, but we invest more of our energy and resources into training and supporting the health and social care professionals so that they're able to support those people in the hospital. Again, we also work with people living with dementia, and the carers actually on site at the museum and gallery. But we have built, or developed rather, co-curated along with occupational therapists and nurses, a resource called the Cultural First Aid Kit. So this is arts activities, music activities, storytelling, and we've just recently added some outdoor activities and things about connecting with nature. And it's free. You can download this resource. I'll provide people with the link, and I can show people it in the breakout rooms and talk a little bit more about that. So I'm conscious that using up the time, so I'll wait till the workshops. Thank you.
Wendy, thanks a lot. I think you have filled us with brilliant experiences and idea, and also this relevant aspect that is the capability of the museum of going outside the museum and to reach out to places, relevant places. And I think this leads us to the next speaker, who is Marjan Ruiter. She is the director of the Jewish Museum in Middelburg. Probably I've mispronounced, and I apologize. But for the things that I've learned about the Jewish Museum, I think the capability of reaching out and bringing bringing out the experience, the collections, and the knowledge, and the content of the museums outside is a strength in this case. And I was very fascinated by the idea of the Zeus Museum at school, that box of sort of delivery that was invented in order to reach schools and pupils in remote areas or in islands where they were not easily connected physically to the museum. So I think they will also belong to the unforgettable tours. So I asked Marjan to spend her 5 minutes telling us that the most important experience is exactly in this reaching out and including people in their recent and past history. Please, Marjan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Annalisa. It's a pleasure to join you. Your questions are related to our mission. Our mission is to connect people, different generations, to the heritage of Zealand. And this is something that we not only do inside our museum, but outside as well. So for us, the museum is just one of the tools we have. We can do here different things than outside, and outside we can do different things than inside the museum. So that's why we developed the ZM school boxes, in which we bring objects to schools so pupils can actually enjoy and learn about their history in their own classroom, and afterwards come and visit the museum. And actually I can relate a lot to both the stories of Charles and of Wendy, in the sense that the Zeeuws Museum is also a very eclectic collection, but we are a very small sister compared to Manchester. And they both emphasize the importance of people. If I look back, I came here in 2009. We made a transition from an object-based museum, object-focused museum, I should say. We're still object-based, but we were focused on objects. And now we've moved toward people last 10 years maybe, in the sense that our objects in themselves are very often beautiful, but they are not necessarily meaningful to present and future generations. If you do not know the story, it's just an object. That's it. And if you know the story, you can relate to it. We ask artists and scientists, people of today, to help us unlock these objects for a new and a future generation. So we have 3 values at the moment that are most important to us, and that are we want to be open, and that is something that Charles emphasizes as well, is that it's a constituent-driven museum. Well, we haven't reached that stage yet, but we are aiming towards it. And Annalisa said, we are a caring museum, and that's something that is for us important as well. We want to be caring for our objects, but also caring about ourselves, the people who work here, but also the people who surround us. So caring is our second focus. And the third one for us is really important, is to be creative, because if we are not creative, we will lose the connection with present day society, and we want to have importance. We want to be of meaning in today's society. So we've been working on social projects for the last 10 years, always in collaboration with groups from outside, because if we want to do it alone, it is not good enough. It is good, but it's not good enough. And as soon as we join forces with groups of people from outside, you actually can make a difference. And that brings me to my final point that I would like to present here, is that although Charles states, which I agree with, that if you are a director, there are limitations to what you can do and what you should do. And I also agree that you have people around you who have their own capabilities, knowledge, and if you employ them, you should use them. But we also have an obligation, because whether you like it or not, we are in a position of power, and we should use this power to benefit society, which means that if we think certain topics are important, we should speak up. We are in a position to speak to politicians. We are in a position to speak to the press. And that's the reason that I became, for example, an ambassador of a Dutch network for dementia. And in my position, it's something that I discuss inside the organization, but also outside the organization. So if I have a meeting with politicians or with, it doesn't matter with who, if I think it's relevant, I bring up the topic of Alzheimer, because I'm an ambassador and I want people to be aware of it, and that we have to join forces to make also the future, not only today, but also the future, a meaningful place for all of us, including people with dementia and their caregivers. Well, that's it from me, so thank you.
Thank you, Marjan. And again, I admire you all for your capacity of bringing all these things, this very good news in such a short time. So thank you also for your ability to concentrate. And now we turn to our one Italian museum, the Museo Il Cassero of Montevarchi, and they have a long story of inclusion and accessibility, starting from the very beginning of the museum. I will turn to Italian now for suggesting a few lines of intervention to Federica Tripelli, the director of Il Cassero. Federica, grazie. Il Cassero ha una tradizione ormai lunga di programmi e di iniziative per l'accessibilità e l'inclusione. Quali sono i cambiamenti più significativi che avete portato alla vostra offerta, anche in termini di organizzazione, di risorse umane, e come sono cambiati in questi più di 10 anni i pubblici, la loro risposta, il modo di farsi coinvolgere? La parola a te per i tuoi 5 minuti, grazie.
Grazie Annalisa, grazie a tutti, sono molto lieta di essere qui oggi. Il Cassero, come hai anticipato, ha ormai una lunga tradizione per quanto riguarda programmi e iniziative per l'accessibilità e l'inclusione. È stato aperto al pubblico nel maggio del 2010 e già dopo pochi mesi abbiamo cominciato ad attivare appunto dei programmi. Abbiamo cominciato con un percorso tattile e nel tempo sono seguiti vari altri programmi per le persone con Alzheimer, i loro caregiver, persone con autismo, non udenti, nuovi cittadini. E diciamo che il nostro modo di lavorare è quello di guardare alle esigenze del pubblico, al territorio, creare uno stretto legame con il territorio per cercare di rendere questo museo veramente accessibile, un luogo di benessere nel vero senso della parola, quindi per creare delle opportunità anche di fruizione di questo spazio per varie tipologie di pubblico. Le nostre attività nel tempo sono cambiate, abbiamo cercato di potenziare attività già sperimentate, ampliare l'utenza e per fare questo abbiamo cercato ovviamente anche dei finanziamenti. Dei finanziamenti importanti sono arrivati in tempi più recenti, grazie alla Fondazione Cassa di Risparmio di Firenze. Proprio nell'ultimo anno siamo riusciti ad attivare un progetto che si chiama Vorrei andare al museo, percorsi di accessibilità museale, e che stiamo concludendo proprio in questi mesi, e ci auguriamo ci possa essere un'altra opportunità per il prossimo anno. Le attività appunto cambiano anche in funzione del rapporto che si crea poi con l'utenza, quindi cerchiamo di rispondere come team di lavoro, che è composto da me, dagli educatori museali e dalle professionalità specifiche per ciascun progetto, di appunto creare delle attività a misura per la nostra utenza. Quindi cerchiamo di soddisfare tutte quelle esigenze che possono venire dalle famiglie e dai singoli soggetti appunto coinvolti. Una cosa molto importante è la formazione. Il personale sin dall'inizio ha seguito una formazione specifica grazie ai diversi soggetti, Regione Toscana, MTA, Museo Omero e molti altri che in questo momento non sto citando, ma assolutamente fondamentali, e questo ci permette ovviamente di rimanere sempre aggiornati e di modulare appunto le attività anche in base alle esigenze. La pandemia ci ha costretto a realizzare alcune attività a distanza, la formazione dell'MTA è stata fondamentale. E poi appunto rispondere proprio sempre alle richieste che ci arrivano da parte di tutti appunto i soggetti coinvolti. Quindi è un lavoro appunto di formazione continua, ed è un'occasione, ecco, un'occasione fondamentale proprio di confronto con i vari operatori e con la comunità.
Thank you, grazie Federica. Ha vinto sicuramente la capacità di sintesi, di raccolta di una storia molto importante, con degli accenni significativi anche al che cosa significa in termini di scelte gestionali e di lavoro sulle proprie risorse umane, che sono tutti aspetti che ci affascinano e sono molto importanti per la trasferibilità di queste esperienze per noi così significative. Io penso che la parola torni ora a Cristina, che ci dà alcune indicazioni operative per il proseguo del nostro lavoro. Ci rivedremo quindi al termine, no, del lavoro dei gruppi. Io intanto vi ringrazio davvero per la ricchezza dei contributi e dei suggerimenti che sono stati forniti.
Esattamente, ora abbiamo pochi minuti per passare alle sessioni di approfondimento, che sono quindi subito aperte, e ci troviamo tra poco. Grazie a tutti, grazie davvero. E poi ci ritroveremo alla fine, dopo le sessioni, ci ritroveremo di nuovo tutti insieme per un commento finale. A tra poco.